They handed me a wedding invitation with my name printed next to a man I barely knew, and a last name that wasn't mine. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still in my work uniform, when my father slid it across like a business contract. "You'll be marrying Nathan," he said. "The deal goes through next month." My mother nodded like it was already done. Nathan wasn't my boyfriend. He wasn't even a friend. He was the son of my dad's best friend, a man whose company was drowning in debt. Marrying me was supposed to make the merger look clean, secure, stable. And me, I was the leverage, the bargaining chip, the obedient daughter who'd save the family business with a signature on a marriage license. But I already had someone. Ryan. He didn't wear suits or play golf on weekends. He fixed electronics in his garage and brought me coffee in mismatched mugs. He loved me for who I was, not for who I could be traded to. So I left. 3 days before the engagement party, I married Ryan in a courthouse with borrowed clothes and a $10 ring. We shared fries afterward and posted a blurry picture with the caption, "Love, not business." That's when all hell broke loose. My mom cried at Kroger like someone had died. My father smashed his phone. And then Nathan messaged me. He said thank you, because he never wanted to marry me either. I'm Emily. I was supposed to be a solution. I chose to be a storm instead. And this is what happened when I refused to sell myself for their salvation. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say, listening in the comments, or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story reached. And if this story hits close to something in you, don't forget to follow the channel. Thank you. And now, here's my story. I'd never liked Sundays, not since I was a kid. Something about the forced calm, the quiet dread of another week starting, and the way my family used it as a time to check in, which usually meant get back in line. But this Sunday, as I pulled into my parents' driveway in Westerville, Ohio, something in the air felt especially tight, like the world was holding its breath. Inside the house smelled like barbecue sauce and boxed cornbread mix, Mom's usual attempt at comfort. She greeted me with a brisk hug and immediately handed me a stack of plates to set the table. No smile, no warmth, just routine. My younger sister Sophie sat in her usual spot at the table, fiddling with her phone. She looked up at me with this strange, loaded expression like she wanted to say something but couldn't. I should have known then. Dinner was supposed to be the usual small talk, overcooked ribs, Mom's passive-aggressive jabs about how I should visit more. But then the doorbell rang. Frank Jennings, my dad's oldest friend, walked in like he owned the place, followed by his son Nathan. Nathan was tall, well-dressed, and as stiff as a mannequin. I hadn't seen him in years, not since high school, and we hadn't even said 2 words back then. I assumed they were just dropping by. I was wrong. Halfway through dinner, my father put down his fork, cleared his throat, and dropped the bomb. "Emily," he said, "Frank and I have come to a decision we're proud of. You and Nathan are going to be engaged. We'll make the announcement at Frank's birthday party next month." My fork froze mid-air. "What?" I blinked, waiting for anyone to laugh. No one did. Frank just nodded, pleased with himself. Mom didn't say a word. Sophie kicked me lightly under the table, a tiny warning that she knew this was coming. "You're joking," I managed. "We're not," Dad said firmly. "This is a great opportunity. Our families will merge. The companies will grow stronger. And Nathan's a good man." I was still struggling to breathe. "I'm with Ryan." Dad's mouth tightened. "Ryan is a phase. He delivers tech equipment and lives in a rented studio. You need to be realistic." I glanced at my mother, hoping for some hint of compassion. She avoided my eyes and kept cutting into her ribs like it was any other night. The bouquet Ryan had sent earlier that day, bright yellow daisies with a handwritten card, was nowhere in sight. I later found it shoved into a plastic pitcher in the kitchen, tucked behind a stack of Tupperware. I'm not marrying Nathan, I said, my voice shaking. Dad's tone hardened. You will end things with Ryan by the end of the month. Otherwise, don't expect this family to support your choices any longer. That was it. No discussion, no emotion, just business. I looked across the table where Nathan sat silent. He didn't even meet my eyes. The room spun. The walls felt too close. I was no longer a daughter, I was a transaction. That night, I packed a bag and walked away. I showed up at Ryan's place just after midnight. His apartment, a cramped studio in Clintonville, was barely big enough for one person, let alone two. But he didn't hesitate. He opened the door, took one look at my tear-streaked face, and said, "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." The next morning, I woke to a dozen missed calls, 2 from Dad, 8 from Mom. The rest were voicemails. In one, Mom was sobbing. "You don't understand what you're doing, Emily. You're ruining everything." I ignored them. For a while. Sophie sent a text. He signed the venue contract. Dad booked the warehouse in Dublin. They're really doing this. Then came the worst part. It's not just pride. Frank's company is drowning in debt. Dad guaranteed the loans. The wedding was to seal a merger. Without it, everything falls apart. I sat there on Ryan's futon, my stomach hollowing. I wasn't just refusing an arranged marriage. I was blowing up a fragile deal that was keeping my father's business alive. Mom wasn't done. She called my manager at the print shop where I worked. The next day, my hours were cut. "We just don't want drama," my boss said with a weak smile. Ryan's car broke down 3 days later. The transmission died and repairs cost more than the car was worth. We couldn't afford to fix it. We sold things. My dresses, makeup, shoes, anything I didn't need. I packed them in boxes and listed them on Poshmark. We lived off ramen and off-brand potato chips. My shampoo was stored under the sink next to cans of soup. Ryan's jackets hung from kitchen hooks. It was survival tight, unglamorous, and suffocating. One afternoon, I ran into my mother at Kroger. I was buying dollar pasta. She stood near the frozen peas holding a bag of quinoa like a weapon. She didn't say hello. "You're choosing poverty," she said quietly, but with venom. "Over a stable life. Over your family. Is that what love looks like now?" I didn't respond. My hands trembled so badly I had to drop the pasta back on the shelf. I left without buying anything. Nathan never contacted me, not even a text. But Lila, my younger cousin, sent me a screenshot of his latest Twitch stream. There he was, half asleep in a gaming chair, live streaming Call of Duty from his basement. The caption, "Chat, should I marry a stranger for a business deal?" He was joking. Or not. Either way, it confirmed what I already suspected. Nathan had no interest in marrying me. He was just as much a pawn as I was. Ryan never pressured me. He never asked me to cut ties or burn bridges. He held me when I cried, brought home gas station roses when he could, and told me we'd make it. But I was starting to realize love might not be enough to outpace the kind of history I came from. And the war was only just beginning. 1 week before the engagement party, a white envelope arrived in the mail. My name was printed in gold cursive across the front, elegant and final. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was an invitation, my name paired with Nathan's, already changed to his last name as if I had no say. No call, no conversation, just ink on thick cardstock that told me I no longer belonged to myself. That night I sat with Ryan in our dimly lit studio. I showed him the invitation. He didn't say anything for a long time, just held it in his hands like it was a notice of eviction from the life we were trying to build. Then he looked up and said, "Let's get married." Not for them. For us. We left at dawn the next morning. The courthouse in downtown Columbus opened at 8. Jake met us there, still yawning, still in his hoodie from the night before. He gave me a tight hug and said, "Let's make it official." The dress I ordered from Amazon didn't zip. I'd tried to fix it in the Uber but ended up throwing a white sweater over it and buttoning my coat. Ryan's car had broken down 2 days earlier, so the three of us split the cost of the ride and carried our documents in a plastic grocery bag. The ceremony was held in a small room with buzzing fluorescent lights. A judge with tired eyes and coffee-stained papers read our vows like she'd done it 1,000 times. Jake snapped a picture with his phone, but it came out blurry, my face mid-laugh, Ryan half blinking. It wasn't perfect. It was us. Later, we posted the photo to Instagram with the caption, "Love not business." We didn't expect the world to care, but we knew our families would. The reaction came fast. My mother called me from the Kroger parking lot, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "You've humiliated us," she cried. "I can't even walk into church." My father didn't call. According to Sophie, he smashed his phone when he saw the post. Then something unexpected happened. Nathan messaged me. Just 2 lines. "Congrats. I'm happy for you. I've been dating a streamer for 6 months, single mom, actually. I never wanted this either." It was the first honest thing anyone in my family circle had said to me in weeks. In a follow-up message, he told me his dad had tried to break them up, threatened to cut him off financially. "Thanks for breaking it all open," he wrote. "I feel free for the first time." By the end of the day, Ryan and I were married and homeless. Our new lease hadn't cleared yet, so we found a rundown motel in Grove City. The sheets smelled like old smoke, and the heater rattled like it was dying. Still, it was ours. We ordered cheap fries and shared a milkshake in a booth with duct tape on the seats. A waitress with kind eyes brought us a slice of chocolate cake and said, "You two look like you could use something sweet." I held the plastic fork in my hand, feeling the weight of everything that had brought us here, the pressure, the silence, the rage. And I realized I wasn't running anymore. I had chosen, not comfort, not approval, but myself. A few weeks after the courthouse wedding, we moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in South Linden. The floorboards creaked with every step. The walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors sneeze, but it had a kitchen, a closet, and a front door that locked. That made it a home. Ryan got a part-time job at a computer repair shop. I picked up freelance design gigs, mostly wedding invites and social media banners, working late into the night. We lived simply. Pasta from the clearance rack, tap water with lemon packets from fast food restaurants, secondhand mugs that didn't match. For a while, we floated in this quiet rhythm, fragile but steady. Then I got the email from my mother. It was long. 4 paragraphs, no greeting. Just an opening line that punched me in the chest. "You took away the last piece of dignity this family had." She said she'd saved for my wedding since I was a child, skipping vacations and buying clearance groceries so I could have a celebration worthy of our name. That money, she wrote, had now gone to covering Frank's debt, the one Dad had co-signed, hoping the wedding would save them both. "You didn't just choose love," she concluded. "You chose to destroy us." I read it 5 times. Each word landed heavier than the last. When Ryan came in and saw me shaking, he reached for me. I pulled away. "I need a minute," I said. "Just a minute." Sophie messaged me later that day. 1 sentence. "Dad's listing the house. It's real this time." I didn't believe it until I found the Zillow link myself. Pictures of the living room I grew up in, staged with fake plants and plastic fruit. The caption read, "Charming family home, great for making memories." That night I couldn't sleep. I tried writing a letter to my dad. I tore it up. I started again. Tore that one too. Everything I wanted to say dissolved the moment I put pen to paper. A few days later, I walked into the apartment and found Ryan pacing, his voice sharp over the phone. "They're letting people go," he said. "They cut my hours to 0. I'm out." He hung up and turned to me frustrated and helpless. "We can't catch a break." We sat down to eat dinner, overcooked rice and canned soup. It was the quietest meal we'd had since we moved in. "I think I should talk to your dad," Ryan said, breaking the silence. "Just try to clear the air. Man to man." I froze. "No," I said sharply. "No, I don't want you near him. I don't want you dragged into that mess." "He's still your father," he replied gently. "And I'm not a bargaining chip," I snapped. "You think I married you so you could negotiate my return?" His face fell. "That's not what I meant." But the words had already built the wall between us. That night, I took a blanket and curled up on the couch. The creaky boards under me felt colder than usual. I stared at the ceiling, the soft hum of the fridge, the only sound in the dark. It wasn't that I didn't love Ryan. It was that I was still learning how to live without shame, and it turns out even freedom has its consequences. The call came at 5 in the morning. Sophie's voice was tight and shaky. She said Dad had a mild heart attack and had been taken to the hospital in Columbus. The words barely registered. I just sat there on the edge of our bed, the room still dark, Ryan still sleeping beside me. By the time I made it to the kitchen, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Her voice, cold and clipped, echoed through the speaker. "Do not come to the hospital. Your presence will only make it worse for him." Then she hung up. I stared at the cheap box of cereal on the counter, the one we'd been stretching all week. I wondered what it would look like if I walked into that hospital room. Would Dad acknowledge me? Would he say anything at all? Or would he turn away like I was some stranger who didn't belong? I didn't go. I told myself I was respecting their wishes. The truth was, I was afraid. Ryan tried to act calm, but stress hung over him like a fog. He applied for a delivery job again, hoping to pick up some extra shifts, but we didn't have a working car. Fixing it meant selling more of what little we had. I sold my silver bracelet, a birthday gift from Mom, when I turned 18. I remember how proud she looked when she gave it to me. She'd said every woman needs one thing in her life that can't be taken. I guess she was wrong. 1 week later, Sophie texted and asked to meet. We sat across from each other at a quiet cafe in Hilliard, barely making eye contact. She placed a cardboard box on the table. "I thought you might want these." Inside were old notebooks, loose photos, and a worn-out pink journal with my name scribbled across the front. It was my childhood diary. I flipped through it slowly, my fingers tracing familiar ink. There was an entry from when I was 10. "When I get married, I want it to be in a garden. Mom will hold my bouquet and cry." I laughed bitterly and wiped my face with my sleeve. Sophie watched silently. "Mom's been going to a support group at church," she finally said. "She tells everyone how you ruined everything, how she can't even look at the wedding photos anymore." I didn't have the energy to react. I already knew. When I'd visited the house once to drop off some of Sophie's things, I noticed the framed photo of me and Ryan was gone from the mantel, replaced with an old family picture, one from before I ever met him. Later that week, Lila stopped by the apartment with bags of ramen and canned soup. She said Frank's wife had changed the locks. Nathan was moving to Chicago with his girlfriend, trying to start fresh away from all of it. I looked around our tiny kitchen where Ryan was carefully wrapping handmade bracelets to ship out for our small Etsy store. He looked up and smiled when he saw me, and I wanted to run to him to wrap my arms around him and feel safe. But something inside me hesitated. It wasn't that I didn't love him. I did. Fiercely. But between the hospital visits, I wasn't welcome at the job we couldn't afford to lose, and the ghosts of a wedding that never happened, it felt like we were both holding something too heavy. That night, after Ryan went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and searched online. How to forgive a family who doesn't want you anymore. I played a video and listened to the woman's voice, calm and rehearsed. But nothing she said made sense. Her words slid off me like water on glass. All I could think of was my father's hands, once firm, once in control of everything, now weak, now trembling. And I wasn't there, because they told me not to be, because I listened. Sophie asked me to help her clean the basement at the old house after a recent storm. The flooding had left parts of the floor soaked, and mold had begun creeping up the walls. I hesitated. The last time I was there, no one spoke to me except Sophie. Still, I agreed. I told myself it was to help her, but deep down, I think I needed to see for myself what was left. When we arrived, Mom wasn't home, or maybe she was and just didn't come out. A folded note sat on the kitchen counter in her neat handwriting. Don't make things worse. Downstairs, the air was thick with dampness. We wore gloves and rubber boots, sorting through boxes warped from water damage. Most held old Christmas decorations or broken electronics. Then I found it. It was pushed behind a shelf wrapped in plastic and bound with rope, a box heavier than the rest. I pulled it into the light, peeled it open, and froze. Inside were documents, contracts, loan agreements. I recognized the names Frank Jennings, my father, and a development company I'd heard of only in vague family conversations. The papers told a story no one had said out loud. Frank's company had been failing for years. My father had co-signed a loan to keep it afloat. The merger, the wedding, was never about unity. It was a lifeline, a condition from the buyers, a show of stability and continuity. I read through the emails tucked inside printed exchanges between Frank and Dad. Some dated back almost a year before I met Ryan. They were negotiating my future before I even had the chance to imagine it. My hands shook. My breath turned shallow. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took pictures. I sent them to Nathan with a short message. In case you didn't already know, we were both pawns, he replied later that evening. I knew, but not all of it. Thanks. My mom's divorcing my dad. Said she can't live with someone who gambles away people's lives. I didn't tell Ryan what I'd found. I told myself I was protecting him, but that wasn't true. I was protecting the illusion that this mess could stay behind us, that the worst had already happened. That night, Ryan made dinner rice and beans again. We sat across from each other, and he asked gently, "Are you okay?" I nodded. He knew I was lying, but he didn't push. We both chewed in silence. The air between us wasn't cold. It wasn't angry. It was heavy, like a curtain between two people who loved each other but didn't know how to name what was growing between them. And that was scarier than any fight we'd had, because it wasn't loud. It was quiet, and silence can swallow anything if you let it. It started with a text from Lila. Check the gallery link. She changed the password. I clicked on the shared family photo drive that had been passed around for years. Birthdays, graduations, every holiday lined up like an archive of who we were supposed to be. I entered the old password. It no longer worked. A few minutes later, Lila sent me a screenshot. The wedding folder, once public, was gone. The photos from my courthouse ceremony, the blurry ones Jake had taken and uploaded with a proud caption, had been deleted. Every trace of my new life was erased like I'd never existed. That same evening, someone else messaged me, an old friend from the church group Mom used to drag me to. She sent a blurry picture of a Facebook post. My mother had written, "Sometimes you give everything to raise a daughter, and then one day she tears it all apart for a man who gave her nothing but trouble. I pray for the strength to forgive." The comments beneath the post were worse. Condolences, offers of prayer. One even wrote, "So sorry for your loss," as if I had died instead of just married without permission. While I was still staring at the screen, Ryan came home. He looked exhausted. He dropped his keys on the counter without a word and sat heavily on the floor next to our pile of Etsy packaging supplies. I joined him cross-legged on the cold tile. He didn't speak right away. "They're calling me runaway groom at work," he said finally. "One of the customers asked if I was the guy who married the girl that ruined her family." He let out a bitter laugh and slammed his fist against the wall. I jumped at the sound, but then I saw the tears in his eyes. I reached for him. "I think I made a mistake," I whispered. "Maybe I should have just waited, done it differently." He pulled me into his chest, held me tightly. "No," he said. "The mistake would have been pretending to be someone you're not. You chose your life. That's the only thing you did right." That night I couldn't sleep. Just past midnight, a notification pinged on my phone. A message from an anonymous account with no photo, no posts. It read, "You have no idea how many lives you've ruined. I'm just here to say, you don't have to carry all of it alone anymore." Still nothing, just the sound of the heart monitor, slow and steady. Then without a word, he raised his hand and tapped the chair next to his bed. I sat down. We didn't talk much. I didn't push. But after a long while, his voice came gravelly and tired. "I did it all out of fear. I was afraid of losing everything, but I never once asked what you were afraid of." I stared at the ceiling, blinking fast. He didn't say he was proud. He didn't say he was sorry. But there was no rage in his voice, no bitterness, just a man who had finally stopped pretending he had it all figured out. That morning, we didn't reconcile in a dramatic sweep. We didn't fix years of damage in a single sentence. But there was a chair between us, no longer empty, and that was enough for me to sit, to breathe, to begin again. A week after I visited the hospital, Sophie sent me a message late at night. Just a single line: "Dad asked if you've been eating." I stared at the screen, unsure what to feel. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't an apology. But it cracked something inside me. A layer I had wrapped around my chest to survive the months of silence. I showed the message to Ryan. He didn't say anything. He just reached out and took my hand, holding it the way you hold something that's been dropped too many times. That was the night we decided we were done waiting for the world to give us permission. If we were going to live this life, we would make it with our own hands. We launched a handmade store on Etsy, filling it with bracelets tied with leftover thread cards drawn in pen and tiny keychains cut from old scraps of felt. It wasn't fancy, but it was us, honest, flawed, and quietly defiant. Ryan started working part-time at a computer repair shop down the street. The pay was low, but he came home every day with a spark in his voice, talking about cables and circuits like they were stories he got to fix. He brought back spare screws and discarded parts, placing them carefully on a shelf he labeled "someday useful." In the evenings, I packaged orders by candlelight. We used recycled tissue paper and wrote handwritten thank you notes. The nights bled into mornings, but we didn't complain. Then Jake, our witness, our friend, our accidental best man, offered to help. He had a decent following on TikTok and filmed a short video in our apartment. I was embarrassed at first, the mismatched curtains, the scratched table, but he framed everything with warmth. "This is what resilience looks like," he said into the camera. "A girl who said no to a business deal and built a brand instead." The video spread faster than we expected. Orders came in from cities we'd never been to. We stayed up until 3 a.m. And love, the real kind, never asks you to disappear. If this story spoke to something inside you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, subscribe, and follow the channel. Your presence means more than you know. Thank you for being here.